Good morning, everybody. I am Usman Jai. I am in charge of the internet access provider of ARTP, the regulatory authority of post and telecommunication. I'm going to introduce you maybe some aspects which are of internet in Senegal in summary. As you can see in the presentation, I will talk a little bit about internet access and the statistics data internet in Senegal, talk about a little bit about some sectors on which we can see the useful of internet and the development perspective in Senegal. So let's go in the part internet in Senegal. So the penetration rate of internet in Senegal is 62.84%. Most of the time the population are saying that. So it's mainly held by the mobile, 98.6%. We can see that internet here in Senegal is not well developed because it presents only less than 2% of the internet registers. So we have as well in Senegal. We have also in Senegal 6 submarine frameworks. We had also as well 250 gigabits and which are extensible of the terabit, because the capacity of the submarine cables are extensible, and they are one of them which takes some capacity going beyond the terabit. Senegal as well is presented as a hub, as a sub-regional hub. Some operators which are here in Senegal, so in some countries of the sub-region, and those countries and some of them haven't overcome to have some submarine cable. The example of Sonatel is well clear because it allows, let's say, to get the way to internet toward the internet in a sub-region in which Sonatel is present. Sonatel is the historical operator in Senegal. So for the actors, mainly the actors we have here is 3 telecommunication operators which are in virtue of their global license can give internet access. We have as well among those 3, we have moreover some access internet provider as well. We have 3 of them. So 1 year ago we had like a perspective of coming to have some virtual operators in the next coming weeks, in the next coming month. And we have as well a universal service operator which cover some direction in the northern Senegal and propose some services, mobile, fixed and internet. As well, the governmental network is handled by the government computer agency, and which gives internet to those governmental network. Other actors which are institutional actors that we are going to sum up because the chain was longer than this. Let's say that the Ministry of Post and Telecommunication, which is in charge of the regulation and the laws which are put in place on the sectors to organize the telecommunication sector a little bit, and the Regulatory Authority of Post and Telecommunication, which has in charge of the regulation and the monitoring of the obligations and the internet access providers and the telecommunication operators, and the regulation and the competition and commission on the development of internet, the level of telecommunication sector. For the content as well, which are in internet, the part which concerns the personal data, I think that the Senegal has a commission which has in charge, which handle the personal data, just like a CDP. Regarding the technologies which use the operators can have internet access, and as you can see in the statistics, mainly it is the mobile which is used to provide internet access And from the mobile, we have technology of XDSL, mainly provided by the historical operator. And the fiber as well is available in Senegal. Let's say the technologies are used for, let's say, some very deep areas in the country. Some technologies of LLS are used to provide internet access in some companies, and some operators which doesn't have the private network use as well the technology just like Wi-Fi or Super Wi-Fi or CDMA or the WiMAX. We can talk about some useful aspects we can see in Senegal, and which are really encouraged by internet. It is the part of education, the education science. The government of Senegal has put in place some initiatives which are really based on internet. I think we can list the example of the virtual university of Senegal, which is really a virtual university in terms of effective. So we talk about 20,000 registered 20,000 students in terms of effective, and which really propose an education platform entirely based online. On the other hand, I think there is the digital space covered as well, which are some space, some educative exchange space, which are linked as well on the possibility of internet providing in order to exchange, to get acquainted, and then to exchange some knowledges, and to promote some guarantee through the decentralized spaces. The other aspect is as well on the media side. I think there are some media agencies which are based mainly on internet. Today, when we visualize a little bit the statistics of internet in Senegal, we can see sometimes that there are some communication sites which are born with internet and which are much more used to platforms, and which are not some physical variants, but some internet sites with internet. So the other part is the e-commerce part. There are some platforms of e-commerce which are strong enough today in Senegal, and which enable the exchanges above C2C, customer in the way of the fact that the people can come and get the announces and say that they want to see the announces, and or they want to, let's say, make some purchase online. And in this context, the platform is really, let's say, viable, and it's really developed. And some platforms has really emerged in Senegal, and they are based as well on this aspect as well. So the video content, it is something which is well developed as well in Senegal, knowing that the main traffic of internet, some of them are based on the video part through some telefilm, and which are developed in Senegal, and which are available online as well. So there are some cloud services with some operators which have some data center in Senegal, which enable some virtues of professional cloud services. So mainly for the development perspectives, I think the panelists have raised out that question. It means that the internet access in Senegal, the actors just like the regulatory authority work well on these different aspects, and they can, let's say, increase the internet access in Senegal, because the Senegal strategy 2025 that they aim in the 2025 horizon will enable to increase the access and then the user of ICT in Senegal. And we have many projects, just like 60 of them, and 20 reforms which are going to be put on place in order to increase the development of the digital and internet in Senegal. So one of those projects consists of the national plan ODB, which are pending which are on implementation pending. A little bit the development of the debit, the mutualization of infrastructure, the development of the cover, a little bit to increase the internet access in Senegal. So at the level of the regulatory authority, there are some perspective as well. As we said earlier in the beginning of the presentation, there's the penetration of internet rate, which is 2%. And only the historical operator has access to those local debits in order to propose some access internet of high debit. A project is pending on the regulatory authority for the time being, and to the Ministry of Post and Telecommunication, which to consist of getting those let's say those local stages, and to have the alternative operators who have not access to internet to have like some local infrastructures on the MVNOs, the Internet of Object as well. There is also the fact that the competition is going to be encouraged noticeably in the network transfer, and we are having some operators are having some difficulties because of that competition as well. Some virtual operators as well have been introduced to encourage the competition a little bit, and for the internet access via mobile. The regulatory authority as well is interested in the object internet. It is a major innovation that everybody is interested in it. The authority is going to launch in the next coming weeks or the next coming days a public consultation a little bit on object internet in order to have the opinion from the stakeholders in Senegal on the way which can be implemented, the regulation which can be implemented in order to encourage the development and the technology development and the technology diffusion. That's what I had that's what I had in my presentation. Thank you very much.
Merci. Few more minutes to take a few more questions. As you make your way to the mic, I will start off with mine, and mine was really on, as we talk about net neutrality, different governments are seeing the internet as a good source of taxation. We have a proposal, I think, in Uganda where they're saying they want to tax 5 cents a day for everybody who uses social media or over-the-top services. So let's just pile that one on top of the other ones. So let's take 3 questions and we'll get answers. And please make sure that you spread the questions across. I know there's a need to give Aida more questions, but I think she's had a good fair of questions. So let's spread the questions. Please, Harold. 1 minute each, please, and 1 question. Karen, it's okay.
Still not coming. Okay, now. Okay, so my question is from the man from Zimbabwe. I've seen that he has put the stress on crime that are related to online crime, social media and things like this. My question is, what are the other kind of cybercrime that you face? Do you face crime related to money laundering, or crime relating to hacking, and more sophisticated crime like people hacking into money transfer or fintech or banks and trying to steal money? Thank you.
Okay, next please.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Tijani Benjamin, j'ai une question.
Good morning, my name is Tijani Benjamin. I have a question for the last presenter. The main aim of this evolution is to have a better development of a country, right? So my question is, what are the impacts of the digital on the development of the country? Do we have today a better growth and some better quality services? Thank you. My name is Kofi Amesin. I'm from Afrinic. My question is for Mr. Alpha. I wanted to understand technically the second element is if the six internet access by the submarine cables that we have in Senegal have problems, or it's only because the capacity are not enough, or they can't be connected, or the necessity is not as you have said a while ago that in Senegal there are 6 submarine access. Is it for development necessary that you have those 6 access, or it's because there were some cable that passed through Senegal that you wanted to be connected on it? What are the impacts?
Thank you for your questions. I think the first question is on the effects of the development of the digital on the country's growth and employment. I think to answer, today we have the contribution to the GDP. In Senegal, the GDP, people are talking about 6%. And so the digital sector, the ambition of Senegal through the 2025 Senegal is to have 10% by 2025 by putting in place reforms and projects. I think there is an impact also on employment. Unfortunately, I do not have statistics, but there is a growth in employment with the development of startups and indirect jobs related to some mobile technology or structures that have boosted development with digital technology, which has profit in Senegal. The other question, so the super Wi-Fi, I think super Wi-Fi is actually helps you to have so the super Wi-Fi is proposed by an operator in Senegal which does not have access to fixed telecommunication networks, and this actually helps you to have fixed internet, high debit via radio technology. You just have to install an antenna in your house, and the operator has, with the BTS, you may have an internet connectivity or connection. The 6 accesses to submarine cables in Senegal, indeed, we have private consortiums that are behind the submarine cables for a need to extend the broadband. So other submarine cables have been installed, but operators that have access to the international broadband are part of private consortiums that have built these submarine cables. And sometimes we want to grow all this.
There was a guy I was asking about other crimes that are not internet freedom, privacy and surveillance. With issues, the criminal issues definitely fraud, identity theft, terrorism, hacking, things like that happening in the country. But to some extent, they're not really much on the bigger domain. Though corruption is the biggest problem that the country has at the moment, as far as the private sector is concerned. Those are the concerns from the private sector. So in my presentation, I didn't major much on the private sector. I was looking at the civil society, but those are also happening in the country. With fake documents being created, it's also in Zimbabwe. We're actually coming up with solutions to curb that so that we avoid such issues. In the past week, there was a guy actually who was making headlines in the country who almost made a payment of 20 million from a revenue authority of the country. But now in prosecution, it's going to be difficult for them to prove that this guy wanted to do something that was fraudulent, so because the law is not yet complete on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jasper. The last three questions, then I'll have my panelists conclude. Thank you.
Hi, my question is from a speaker from Zimbabwe. My name is Ufa, I'm an academic fellow from Nigeria. In our offline world, people are allowed to have their opinions. It mustn't necessarily be good or bad, but it's still their opinions. And to the best of my knowledge, there's no law that punishes someone for having an opinion to fact they don't act on it. But from the law from the bill that you described, people may not be able to share their the same opinion that they have offline or online. So I would like you to clarify that for me. Thank you.
My name is Angelica Brockstampfer. I'm an IT consultant and blogger. I want to point out that I have not heard you looking into one of the major crimes on the internet, which is the violation of intellectual property rights. I've seen a lot in Africa, people downloading softwares, music, and everything. One is they are distributing viruses. This will affect your net. Sometimes it will link your net up to botnets and all kinds of other things. And also it's important for the youth, I think, that they have a way of earning money with things that they can publish on the net and being allowed to get paid unless being stolen. Thank you.
Good morning, it's Paul Wilson from APNIC. About the Zimbabwe presentation, I thought that was very interesting, very useful at an event like this to hear about those sorts of recent developments. But about that legislation, I was wondering if it had been put through a review in terms of some of the principles that have been laid down to sort of help formulate legislation like that in terms of things like intermediary liability and transparency and due process and so on. And I'd refer you to an interesting document which came from a RightsCon conference a few years ago, and that's the Manila Principles. So there was a conference in Manila where a set of principles were laid down through a multi-stakeholder process. That was actually supported by KICTANet, at least I know in this region. But those principles are about intermediary liability and about transparency and due process, and they're very interesting and very useful in reviewing how legislation is actually being phrased and how it might be implemented in terms of things like takedowns and interventions in the infrastructure. And the other interesting things about that about those principles is they represent one case where the ISP operator community has interests aligned with the civil society groups that were actually also interested in the principles, because all of the principles of that document actually really do satisfy or address the needs of both of those stakeholder groups. So ManilaPrinciples.org is where you can find them, and I think for anyone who's interested, they're quite a useful reference point. Thanks. That's ManilaPrinciples.org. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much. Thanks for that point. Okay. Just let me start with you, and then I'll go to Dr. Jalo, and then Aida.
Thank you so much for the concerns. Yeah, I think on the issue on the legislation, the bill has not been passed into law because the new dispensation, the new government that come on board, so that there were a lot of deficiencies with this within the proposed bill. So they're also doing more further consultancy so that they can come up with the law and actually increasing the stakeholders that are involved, including the human rights, the private sector. They're also going to be involved in that. Then on opinion on intellectual property rights, yes, we've launched a city policy this year, but in terms of our law, we have not yet implemented this. It's being done on a sideways. People go and register their intellectual property with the private company, which is almost doing it on behalf of government, but can't take the case to court, make sure you defend your startup. We've got issues currently with one of the biggest players in the country where someone is saying they took my idea and implemented it 6 years down the line when I went to them to seek a partnership. So we as a country, in the new bill, part of it is the bill is not really that good. We are yet to work with lawyers and advocates. Then when the lady was about offline and online rights, yes, that's the reason why we recommended that we should also redo the bill, taking into consideration the human rights international standards as well as the representatives in the country, because definitely people should be able to observe their offline rights online, but the only difference is online information stays for long, moves so fast, reaches a lot of people, so that's the reason why they are very concerned about that. But I think when we come next year, when we implement the bill, we should have done something better. Thank you so much.
Merci.
Thank you, moderator. So I should not go beyond 2 minutes. Let me be brief. For the net neutrality, to conclude, what we need to recommend: one, we need to have the principle of neutrality in the various legislation, in particular in the various important documents like the digital strategy or cybersecurity document. We also need to limit resort to specialized services. We need to make sure that this is structured. We need to implement the principles to all technologies, and this is critical as well. We need to avoid promoting some technologies at the expense of others. We need also to be able to control and to observe neutrality of the internet at all levels, at all stakeholders, at the level of all players, and this is important. This is briefly some 4 or 5 major principles which we need to observe in public policy to have neutrality of the internet. Thank you. Merci.
Alors, je vais profiter.
I would like to take this opportunity to address some issues. I did not have the opportunity to react to that. Generally, when we discuss these issues in countries like Uganda or Tanzania, to include taxation and OTT, when we ask governments to promote local actors, we have this perception of dichotomy between GAFA and local actors. And the question we ask on Facebook on the part of African government, what is our share? What do we get from what you're doing? So what should be noted is that most of the Facebook users, 85% of our users are not in the US. They are in Africa, in Asia, and in Europe. And what does it mean? Populations like local developers create applications from Facebook, be it formal or informal. They use applications like Facebook, WhatsApp, Viber to develop their companies. When governments think that as you see, governments are targeting now social media and they are enduring user they are supposed to help in terms of public policy, the dream would be to have an African Facebook or to have African applications that have the same magnitude as Facebook. But this is possible if we have the good public policy. Coming back now to the net neutrality, I would say that this is a question which goes beyond the technical aspect of actors of the ITC. It is a human right issue, to be honest. People should have access to the internet, and more we have private interests that are taking precedence over public interests. So we as Facebook, we are advising governments and public authorities to have a long-term approach which promotes innovation of the local sector, but also international actors. Thank you.
Thank you, Aisha. I know the discussion can go on and on, but thank you, everybody. I'd like to thank my panelists. Thank you so much for being working together with me on time.